Um, so far, it has provided me with a great deal of resources that has helped me with my oral communication skills. And it's critical for me because I'm an actress and an entertainer. So just being able to publicly speak is nerve-wracking, of course, but we can get through it together. We can go around. I've worked with Ms. Simmons in the writing studio and the speaking studio, and I've seen tremendous improvement with my day-to-day skills as well as my performances on stage. Actually, when I went in there, we had recorded, videotaped, and reviewed my speeches to help further my oral communication skills, which is essential because I speak publicly, and like I said, I'm a performer, theater maker, so trying to get lines delivered, you have to get it across, so get the message across. I'm so proud to be a part of the QVP program, and I'm also proud to introduce the speaker for today, Ms. Joan Higginbotham. But before she comes up, I'm going to give you a little information about her. She was born in Chicago, Illinois, and she flew aboard the Space Shuttle Discovery Mission STS-116 as a mission specialist. She is an engineer and a former NASA astronaut who received a Bachelor of Science degree from the Southern Illinois University of Carbondale. She also has a Master's of Management Science and a Master's in Space Systems, both from the Florida Institute of Technology. Ms. Joan Higginbotham is the third African-American woman to go into space after Ms. Mae Jemison and Ms. Stephanie Wilson. During her space shuttle to the Discovery mission, she logged over 308 hours, and she has received many awards for her exceptional contributions to our society. And some of these awards include the Adler Planetary and Women in Space Science Award and the NASA Exceptional Service Medal. Ms. Joan Higginbotham is also a member of the Delta Sigma Theta Incorporated and the Links Incorporated. Currently, she is the Director of the Community Relations at Lowe's Home Improvement in Mooresville, North Carolina, and we have the distinct honor of hearing from this truly phenomenal woman. So, ladies and gentlemen, please give her a warm welcome, Ms. Joan Higginbotham.
Good morning. Okay, let's see if technology is going to work for us here. Well, good morning again. Oh, we can do so much better than that. Good morning. Good morning. That's so much better. Hey, I'm so glad to be with you this morning. We're going to talk about communications, since you haven't figured that out yet. And it's really interesting because there are two things that I want to point out. First of all, what Dr. Reynolds said. She said that communication is important no matter what your career field. And I can attest to that because I'm an electrical engineer. And I love math and I love science. So who would have thought a math and a science lover would need to know how to speak publicly? But throughout my career, even as an electrical engineer, I've had to go out and do presentations. I've done more speaking as a rocket scientist and astronaut than I have in my current role, which is Director of Community Relations, which also needs to have a public. So it's very true. No matter what you do, no matter what your career path, you will need to learn how to communicate effectively. So always keep that in mind. And the other thing, Sister Anu, is that correct? Anu. He's from Cameroon. I actually went to Equatorial Guinea, which is, if you all don't know, is basically to the south of Cameroon. It's in, I used to run a malaria program over there, and so it's a very small world. And so over there, actually the native tongue, believe it or not, is Spanish. And although I'm not fluent in Spanish, I still need to ask people how they communicate, the one answer you'll get is, oh, we all talk. But if you look at it from a different perspective, some people may give you a different answer. So let's take a look at a couple of different generations of people who are living now. We're going to start with the baby boomers, and you've probably heard about those guys. So the baby boomers grew up in the generation of television. It was the advent of TV. And TVs back then, when they first came on board, were these huge things that you put on the floor. They were kind of encapsulated in a little console, and they had, if you heard the term rabbit ears, they were big pair of antennas, one like this, one like this, and you had to twist it to get a good picture. And during the baby boomer years, the TV went from black and white to color, and that was a huge deal for black. Now, the baby boomers are characterized by, they wanted BMWs, they wanted big mansions, and they wanted a spouse with 2.7 children. They were just really driven to succeed. But when you ask them now about technology and how they embrace it with respect to communication, you know, they'll use the internet a little bit, but I think they still get a comfort from a piece of paper having something to print it out. Now, if you go on to the Gen Xers, now those people grew up in the time of computers, and I cannot forget the first computer. This is preceded Game Boy and all this other stuff. It was the Atari computer. I know all the students are way beyond the members, so let me just tell you a little bit about the Atari. The Atari was like this big. It was a huge thing. And they had a game on it called Pong, which was basically a computerized ping pong game. And my brother bought it, and he thought we were the coolest family in the world. So the game itself was very, very crude. The paddles, which are basically, I'm going to use this. This was like a paddle. So there's one paddle on this side of the screen, and there's the paddle on this side of the screen. And basically the only thing you could do was slide the paddles up and down and move them forward. And then you had a little ping pong ball. It looked like a little black puck that went in between the two paddles. So you had a paddle here, and the sound was even worse. Between the paddles. We got that game. That was the coolest thing. But during the Gen X generation, the computers started to go from something big to something smaller. Now, the Gen X people really embrace technology. They too were driven, but they start thinking about, hey, I like technology, it's really important, but I want to have a little bit of balance in my life. I want to work hard, and I want to play hard. So they started moving away from the generation of baby boomers who were working like 60 and 80 hours a week. And the Gen X people love technology. They embrace technology, and they communicate a lot with technology. Now, the next group we're going to talk about is what most of the students in here are. You guys are the Gen Yers. And you have lived in nothing but a technologically savvy world. I don't think you've ever seen like a pay telephone. My stepdaughter said, well, what did you do? How did you charge your cell phone? Because she lost her cell phone charger. I said, we didn't have cell phones. We didn't have phones that we could actually take around with us when we were young. They had pay phones that you'd see on the corner. There was a booth. And you go in, there's a phone, you put some money in, that's how you made a call home. You didn't have a cell phone. You guys don't know a lot about that. And you guys are super adept at all the technology, and you love it, and you use it. So when I ask you, what would you do as far as technology and communicating, this is probably what your answer would be to me. This is how we communicate. So today, while we know this is a great form of communication, we're going to say no to technology and communicating. Today we're going to go old school, and when we're talking about communicating, we're going to talk about speaking, and we're going to talk about writing, which I kind of put in the same bucket because they're somewhat synonymous. People tend to write the way they speak. So those things I kind of put in the same bucket. Now, the one piece that people tend to miss when you ask them about communication is the listening piece. Because while you're communicating with people and you're talking back and forth, I'm talking to you, but hopefully you're listening. If not, we're missing a huge piece of communication puzzle. I'm trying to get a message across to you. Hopefully, you are receiving the message I'm trying to get across to you. So as I was doing this presentation, I came across this wonderful quote from Mark Twain. He said, if we were meant to talk as much more than listen, then you would have been given 2 mouths and only 1 ear. So think about that next time somebody's talking to you. I'm going to say that next time I'm talking to my husband, and he interrupts me, I'm like, honey, 2 mouths, 1 ear, doesn't work. Back in 1994, I was, well, let me go back a little further. When I went to college, 87, so you guys start calculating, forget about old I am. I came out of college, I got my degree in electrical engineering, said love math, love science, and natural fit for me. My goal, my career plan, and you'll be told this probably have a 5-year career plan. My career plan was to go work for IBM because I worked for them for 2 summers. Well, when I was about to graduate, a little kink was thrown in my brain because IBM was not hiring engineers. But they said, hey, come on over as a salesperson, and then we'll bring you over as an engineer. I'm thinking not so much. I don't like being told no. I don't want my meals to depend on whether or not I'm making a commission. So not having another job, I kind of put them on the side, and NASA was actually recruiting at that time. Now, anybody else would probably be doing backflips if NASA called them. Me, not so much because I was not necessarily too much into space. And the year before, in 1986, NASA had discovered this horrendous accident with the Space Shuttle Challenger exploding literally minutes into the launch. And so I'm thinking, I'm weighing the pros and cons of this. I'm thinking, Florida, that's a plus. NASA, I don't know. I didn't know if there was a lot of longevity in that career. That was my big concern. The other thing was moving 1,000 miles away from family, friends, and anybody I knew. If I moved to Florida, I wouldn't know anybody there. I was a little concerned about that. But I went down there. I got to see the space shuttle. I got to see the launch pad. I got to see the towers. It was gorgeous. I said, I am there. And so I went there with a 5-year plan saying that if I didn't like NASA and they didn't like me, I could always go back to private industry. Well, that never happened because I love my job. I mean, who gets to work on space shuttles every day? Who gets to meet astronauts? It was a phenomenal job. I was happy. I had made good money, climbing up the proverbial career ladder, doing very well for myself. And at that time, I was the only African-American female working on the shuttle. And so as such, they would send me out to the community trying to get recruits from college to come and work for NASA. So that's the first time my public speaking came into play. I'm a rocket scientist, and they're sending me out to the community to go talk. Well, 7 years into that career, I was really, really happy. Life as I knew it was good. My boss said 5 words to me that were going to change my life forever. He said, you make a good astronaut. Well, I took that as a compliment because I thought astronauts were really cool and they got to fly on the space shuttle. And I let it go as a compliment. Didn't really think much about it. About a month later, he asked me, had I put in my application to be an astronaut? I said no. Weeks later, he asked me, I was like, ding, 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 light came on. He's going to keep asking me this until I say I put in an application. So I did so, literally just to get them off of my back. Well, little did I know, as I applied to be an astronaut in 1994, so did 6,000 of my closest friends. So let me tell you just how significant. That's a huge number. So I don't know how many students are on campus, but I'm sure it's not 6,000. But of the 6,000 people who applied, they only asked 122 people to come down and do an actual interview. And I was one of those 122. When I got that phone call, I'm thinking, I know this is a clerical error, but I'm going to go along because I'm good with that. I get down to Houston. They brought people in groups of 20. And of course, the first thing we do is we get into a room, and everyone has to stand up and introduce themselves. Again, public speaking in action. And of course, you're all nervous because you're thinking, these are people that I'm competing against for this job. So everyone's getting up, introducing themselves, and the guy that came before me was some huge fighter pilot, and he's talking about all these planes that he's flown, he's done 2 tours, and I'm thinking, okay, so the clerical error, I know for sure it was a clerical error because I should not be here right now. So I stood up. I'm sure everybody could hear my heart beating out of my chest because I was just as nervous as I could possibly be. And I stood up and I said my name and I said, I'm a rocket scientist. I launch shuttles. I've launched 37 shuttles at Kennedy Space Center. And there was a little hush that kind of fell over the room. I don't think people were actually impressed. And so I kind of stood up a little bit taller and puffed my chest out. Yeah, big boys. So we went through that entire week. We went through a myriad of medical and psychological exams, and only 1 hour of that entire week, from Sunday to Friday at 4 p.m., was a one-on-one interview. Because in this particular context, they wanted to make sure that you didn't have any psychological or medical things that were going to leave you out. But when you sat down to interview, you sat down with a panel of 13 people. I mean, how intimidating was that? At the end of the week, it was just one of the most tremendous experiences that I had. I made some phenomenal people. Although technically I was competing with these people became my friends. Now, we were the first group that came in, so there were 4 people behind us. So we had a little bit of weight ahead of us to decide to hear whether or not we were going to be selected. Well, fast forward 6 months. Everyone gets a phone call. All of the 122 people who interviewed get a phone call, which is a beautiful thing. You don't get like a very generic letter saying yay or nay. And I remember distinctly getting my phone call. It was a Tuesday. I was at work. I just come back from some meetings, and the gentleman that called me was actually a friend of mine who worked at Kennedy Space Center with me, a higher manager. And the phone conversation began like this. Joni, we had so many good candidates. And I can't tell you what the rest of that phone call was about because I didn't care. He basically was telling me that I was not selected. And then I got mad. I'm like, what do you mean I'm not selected? So the person who was not really wanting to be an astronaut was not really happy that somebody told her she could be an astronaut. Again, I don't like being told no. So the long of it is, the short of it is, I talked to the board. I had my first master's degree, which is a little bit more business-oriented. They wanted to be more technical. Not what I was really wanting to do because I just finished that master's degree. But the ball was not on my court. If I wanted to be a more viable candidate, I had to go back to school. I did that. Went back to school, got another master's degree, reapplied, and long story short, this time over 3,000 of my friends applied, and I got selected to be an astronaut. So that was like one of the coolest things. So now, let me tell you why I shared that little story with you. Because hopefully, I did some of the things when I was telling you that story that you should do when you're doing your public speaking. And the first thing is that you should use standard English. When you're going out to talk in any venue, if you're going job interviewing, job hunting, whatever, use standard English. There's a time for slang, it's not bad. And why do you need to use standard English? Because in the real world, you need to use it, otherwise you'll be sorry. And I was so afraid that I was not going to remember what those acronyms stood for. I had to study that all night long. I had to look that up. That's texting language, which I don't do very much of. So to me, texting is a waste because I spell everything out. I don't use all the fingers. So the first thing is to use standard English. The second thing is to speak and write as you normally would. Don't go and talk and use all these big words that you normally don't use because people will see through you. You will be truly transparent that that is not you. You will not look to go speak on stage or wherever. So speak as you write. The other thing is to be clear and concise. Don't muddy the waters with all the stuff that doesn't matter. Say what you want to say. Get your facts out. Repeat it. Sit down. Short and sweet. And also, when you speak with people, make eye contact. Now, I'm going to say this, and all the educators in the room, let me get it out before you're ready to beat me up. Now, my mom was a registered nurse and a teacher. Having a parent as an educator is one of the worst things in the world, only because they will not let you get away with anything. So my mom, when I had to do speeches, would make me practice, and I would hate that because start again. Nope, look at me, start, speak up, hold your head up. And I really, to this day, I just hated that. But I go back and I tell them, thank you for making me do that. Because now when I'm listening to someone talk or speak and they're like, yes, and so today we're going to, and they're not looking at me, I'm like, seriously? How am I supposed to be engaged with you? So I appreciate that she did that for me, although I was definitely not appreciative of it at the time. The other thing, a couple things, smaller is better. Like I said, don't use huge words if you don't need to. Say that oxygen, you'll live another 3 years or something. Simpler is better. He is a man. You know he is a man. It's either a boy or a man. We kind of get the gist that it is a male figure. So simpler is better. And then just be aware of gender. We don't say stewardess anymore. We say chairman as kind of chair because now we have CEOs that are women. So let's talk a little bit about listening because that's a skill that people don't use nearly enough today. So are you hearing me or are you listening? Well, everybody is hearing me because basically there's sound vibrating in your ear. There's your eardrum vibrating, so you're hearing me. But are you really listening to what I'm saying? Listening is a skill that we all stage and talk to a bunch of people. Everyone needs to kind of put the speaker at ease, you know, be friendly, you know, nod, smile, feel like you're listening. Also, you can listen with your eyes. And so the other thing about communication is that communication is not just words. So as I'm up here, I'm sure as I came across the stage, people are like, oh, I wonder what she's wearing. Okay, so she's having that hair day. There are things that you look at, and a lot of the things, 55% of communicating, and this is just some other statistics, just like Karen shared with us this morning, is your body language. So as I'm talking to people, I try to look at them. I try to stand up straight. I try not to look at my shoes when I'm talking to people. It's about your body language. I'm not sitting here or standing here being really curt. I'm not like this. You know, it's about presentation. So be mindful of your body language when you're communicating with people. The other thing is your delivery. Are you really loud? Are you really soft? Is your pitch like a monotone? Are you starting and stopping? Are you lilting your voice a little? Is everything just flat and neutral? Be mindful of your delivery. And last but not least, only 7% of communication is what you say. So actually, it's about the entire package. It's about what you're saying. It's about how you're saying. It's about how you're presenting it. It's the entire package. Everything about you is a part of your communicating. It is not just words. So by show of hands, who thinks he or she is an effective communicator? Beautiful. All right, the young lady right here. Can you come up on stage with me? Yes. All right, we're going to do a little exercise to see who is an effective communicator. We want to see who is an effective speaker and who is an effective listener. So as she's coming, if you guys have a little piece of paper, something you can draw on, you grab that out, get that and paper and a pen, or whatever you need to draw. And tell me your name. Danielle? Yes. Okay, this is Danielle, everybody, if you don't know her. So we're going to do a little exercise to see who's an effective speaker and who's an effective listener. Basically, we're going to see how effective Danielle is at communicating, and we're going to see how effective all of you are at listening. Okay, so on a sheet of paper here that I'm going to give to Danielle, I have something drawn. What Danielle is going to do is she is going to describe to you what I have on this piece of paper, and we're going to see if she is going to be effective in telling you what's on this piece of paper, and you are going to be effective in listening. And hopefully what you draw is what's going to be on this piece of paper. All right, let's see if I can do this. Keep the mute button for me.
Yeah, just hold it down.
All right, so give it 1 second. Okay, so this is what we have. No, she said, am I allowed to say what it is? No, it kind of a piece of paper. She is going to use descriptive language to describe what's on the piece of paper. Hopefully, it will be translated to you, and you'll get the same image. I'll give you about 2 minutes to do that. Go ahead.
Okay. The whole thing is made up of lines. It's 4 lines that together make. And it makes something. There's 2 of them. It is a rectangle. It's a shape. It's perpendicular. It's composed of parallel lines. Basically, I mean, it's a rectangle. Choose 2 of them. And there's 5 by 5.
Good. Are you happy with that description? Okay. All right. Thank you very much for being a little bit. long side of the rectangle is on the horizontal. So if you just draw one rectangle on your paper. The second rectangle is the exact size and shape of the first rectangle. However, the second rectangle, the first, okay, see, it was a little harder than I thought. Okay. The second rectangle lies underneath the first rectangle. So there's one on top and there's one on bottom. Now, if you take the first rectangle and divide it in half perpendicularly, so you have one even side on the left side and the other side on the right side. The right side of the top triangle sits on the left side or the left half of the bottom rectangle. I'm going to say that one more time. You have two rectangles. If you just draw the first rectangle any way you want on top, divide it in half. The right half of the top rectangle sits on top of the left half of the bottom triangle. All right, let's see what we did here. All right, does anybody have that? All right, so we still might succeed if we have one person that have. But the point is, communication. You have to be very clear and concise in communication. We actually did this in one of my engineering classes, and everyone felt miserably too as well. So the question is, was the speaker effective? Somewhat. It was kind of a difficult thing to describe. A little bit effective. Were you guys effective at listening? So where was the breakdown? The breakdown was somewhere between the speaker, myself, and the listener, you all. So it just goes to illustrate how important being clear and concise is. Hopefully you'll never have to describe to somebody what's wrong with these paper. So, if you can give me about 10 more minutes, I'd like to show you one quick video. And so you're probably thinking, what does communication have to do with space? It has everything to do with space. This is December 9th, 2006. We're walking out and we're about to get strapped in the shuttle. Mind you, we did this 2 days earlier. We sat in the shuttle for 3 hours, and at the end of 3 hours, they told us we weren't going anywhere because the weather sucked. That was communication that I didn't appreciate. So we got dressed, we went back to the crew quarters, and 2 nights later we came back out and we got all strapped in again. So as we're sitting there on our backs for 3 hours, with the blood rushing to our head, this is how we got a communication that was much, much better. They told us that we were actually going to go flying that night, and the engines lit. Trust me, it's a little bit louder than here, a little bit shakier, and we blasted off into space. Now, the one neat thing about that is you can actually feel yourself going faster in the vehicle. So about right here, we're about 8 seconds into flight. We're already going 750 miles an hour. This was the first night launch since 2003 when they had the Columbia disaster, in which I actually lost 3 of my classmates who were on board there. So we were launching the first night launch. Really incredible. You see up there, you can see it's kind of like if you go on a roller coaster, you start going up a hill, it's kind of really shaky and rickety. That's because the 2 solid rocket boosters that are coming out produce 7 million pounds of thrust. So it's a rocky, rocky road. The one, yeah, in 2003 when they were coming back in. And so about 2.5 minutes into flight, those boosters fall away and you keep going into space. You have, as you see those boosters falling away, they actually fall into the Atlantic Ocean. We go and retrieve them and we use them again. The shuttle's on top. We have another fuel tank on the bottom. Sorry for the visuals, it's not that great. And 8.5 short minutes after we have taken off, we're in space. And so now you see the exciting thing. Now, this is a robotic arm, and on the end of the arm is a camera. The Space Shuttle Columbia, what happened is they were coming in, they took a hit of debris, and it reached the wing. So what we're doing there is we're panning, making sure that we haven't taken any hits. You can't really see it, but I'm actually in the window waving. It was a little dark, you can see what the fidelity of the camera was, and it's pretty good. So we are going to the International Space Station, which is 200 miles above the Earth. As we're approaching it, the one thing that we can't see is the bottom of the shuttle, because our arm does not reach under there. And so as we're going close to the International Space Station, the shuttle does a backflip, and this is sped up. It took about 45 minutes to do this. And as the bottom of the belly of the orbiter is exposed, the Russians were actually taking pictures of the bottom of the shuttle. So that's the window of the space station. They see us coming up in front of them. We're now traveling at 17,500 miles per hour to catch up with the International Space Station. So what we're doing now, the space station is here, the shuttle is here. The shuttle starts backing into the space station. So we go from 17,500 miles per hour to 0.1 feet per second so that we don't smack into a nicely spot. You can see we're in space with my ponytail floating. So over my shoulder was actually the space station coming into view. We have a hatch on the shuttle, we have a hatch on the space station. You open those two and now you have free access to go both ways. It's interesting because on the station, talking about communication, we had a Russian guy, so I speak Russian a little bit. We had a German guy, and then we had one American astronaut. And then we had 7 American astronauts on the shuttle. So now all 10 of us are together, and we're there to do a particular mission. For us, we were actually there to take another piece of the hardware to the International Space Station. Now I'm just going to kind of orient you. You're on the space shuttle. You're upstairs. You're now coming down. That's our little toilet there. In a minute, you'll see one of my crewmates riding the bicycle. We call that the ergometer. You can't call it a bicycle, otherwise everybody will know what you're talking about. You won't sound intelligent. So we're going down towards the back of the shuttle. And this is kind of like the trunkier part where we keep all the equipment. And so we took up 3,000 pounds of equipment. We took up water because they couldn't make their own water in the space station at that time. And what you're seeing now is somebody's sleeping bag. That's the blue item here. We slept in sleeping bags. And this is the only time in my entire life that you'll ever see me without my contacts and makeup and hair done. And as my crewmate was filming this, I told him, I said, you can't ever show this to anybody. And he puts it in the final video for us. So now we're going to go back into the hatchback you saw us opening here, and we're going to the space station. This is now the American laboratory because pieces of the space station are owned by the Americans, pieces are owned by the Russians. And you just see there's massive amounts of equipment. I mean, it's literally a laboratory. As you're going back, you'll see Mike. Mike was the commander of the space station. He looks like he's upside down, but in space we don't have an up or down or left or right. You just flip the way you need to flip. As we take a left turn, this is where the guys get dressed before they go out and they do their spacewalk. You see we have the speed limit up there. You keep going back and now you're going into the Russian segment. And it's really interesting because this is where the guys, like, they have to exercise 2 hours a day and they hang up all their smelly things here. So you just kind of zoom through that part really quickly because it's like a lot going in there. And you keep going back and you get to the kitchen and you get to the sleeping quarters. This is Misha. He was our Russian counterpart on the space station. And as we keep going back, that's Thomas Schreiber. He's the German astronaut. He stayed up there for 6 months, and we went up there to get him and take him back. Now, we actually had a mission. We just didn't go up there to play. We were taking up another piece of the hardware to put on the end of the space station. And the way we did that was with a robotic arm. So there were 2 robotic arms. There was one on the shuttle. So some of my crewmates on the shuttle grabbed the piece of the space station. They hung it on the side of the space station. That's my arm on the top. So with my robotic arm, I came in and grabbed that piece of hardware from them. Once I had it, they let it go and they backed away. And while we were doing that, the guys inside were getting ready for a spacewalk. And they're breathing pure oxygen so that when they go outside, they don't get the dents because we take them down to a lower pressure. It's kind of like diving. So they're in their white spacesuits. We close this hatch. We depressurize the cabin on the other side. And there's another hatch as you see they go out. Now one thing you'll notice, you'll see it's day and night a whole bunch. That's because traveling 17,500 miles an hour, we go around the world for 1 time in 90 minutes. So in that 90 minutes, you can see 45 minutes of day and 45 minutes of darkness. So In 24 hours, we get to see 16 sunrises and 16 sunsets. Pretty cool. So as we're moving our piece of hardware into place, we have guys on the outside that are getting ready for us. We're actually moving that arm just like a robot with joysticks. So it's getting into the place now with our arm, and the next thing you're going to see is our guys are going to take out these big drills, kind of like the drills at your house, but way more expensive, and they're bolting everything into place. You see there's one guy at this corner and one guy at that corner. This is really cool because this is one of the guys doing a spacewalk. So you see the shuttle, this is the spacewalk, the space station. They actually have cameras in their helmets. Also in their gloves, because they're going around the world and it's really hot. When the sun is out, it's 275 degrees Fahrenheit. When the sun goes in, it's minus 275 degrees Fahrenheit. So that suit is a protection mechanism for us. For them, they also have heated gloves because your fingers can get cold. So as they're doing the spacewalk, there are a couple of things they need to do. They're actually making different electrical connections. It's like taking a strip at your house, a power strip, and taking out the power strip and plugging it into the wall. So that's kind of what they're doing here. Now, while they're out there talking about communication, they're out there for 6 hours. They can't remember everything to do. So there's a guy inside who's orchestrating the whole thing. They'll tell the first guy, go to your first workstation and do this. They'll tell the second guy the same thing. So communication is a huge part. I'm actually driving the arm now. This is my colleague on the arm, and he's holding a piece of hardware, and he's communicating to me how close he is. Now, the last thing we needed to do was to take this big solar array, and if you've ever had like a AAA map and you've taken it out and you try to fold it back nicely and never folds nicely, that's what was happening with the solar array. Unfortunately, that's not a good thing for solar arrays because we needed that for power. And so we came up with this brilliant plan. The guys in mission control talked to us. They said, hey, why don't you go out there? And one of our crewmates is kind of big and burly and said, why don't you shake this thing? So he's shaking it, and we're trying to reel it back in, and he's shaking and it's reeling, and it's a really, really slow process. So on the fly, they came up with another process for him to go out with a tool that they wrapped in tape because there were 600 volts coming off that array. And finally, he basically fanned it in, and we got it controlled back into the box. And the guys in mission control were ecstatic because this meant now the next mission can launch and they could do what they needed to do. So it's not all work in space to get to play too. You have to exercise because you don't use your legs, and when you come back, you need to make sure your legs are strong. We have one of the guys on board who actually was a Frisbee champion, so he bought his Frisbee to play with. And when they get tired of playing with the tools, they play with their crewmates. I would never have done this on the first day. Would not have been this way. And then because our mothers were on board, we got to play with our food. And it's really interesting because since you're falling, every liquid that escapes turns into a ball. And it will stay floating until it hits something and it'll explode. Now, most of our food came in like little containers. We don't have fridges, we don't have microwaves, so everything was in a package. You could either heat it or add water to it. That's about the cooking techniques that we had. So about the 7th day, after we had a very, very brutal timeline, we all got together. We had a group dinner over on the space station. They brought out some special things for us to eat. There's some things they brought out that I just refused to eat because I couldn't identify them. And then it was time for us to go. We spent about 10 days on the space station, so said our goodbyes. We took Thomas back with us. We left Sunny there. She went to do a 4-month stay up there, and then we backed away from the International Space Station. Now, it's crucial because of the dynamics of space. If you don't back away at a good rate, you can actually start moving back into the space station. So that piece of equipment I have is what the troopers use basically when they're tracking their speed. I'm tracking the speed of the space station, making sure that we're moving back at a constant speed. And this is taken from the shuttle. That's what the space station looked like after we left. So there are a couple more things that we had to do before we were able to come home. We had to deploy some experiments. And after the experiments were deployed, we actually closed the doors and got seated and came back. Now, when we launch them, when we come back, we wear these big orange suits for protection, just in case we need to bail out of the shuttle. But if we need to bail out of the shuttle, it's not a good thing. We probably won't provide anyway. But they tell us, you know, the suits are good for you. So we put them on. So we're heading back in. Kind of looks like a video game. You can tell how good the pilot is doing. As long as he keeps that triangle and the square in the middle, he's doing a phenomenal job. And we had a tremendous pilot. So we came in, we were pulling about 1.5 Gs. Gravity is really heavy, by the way. And we landed on December 22nd. Now, remember, we don't have any more fuel. We have 3 good engines, we don't have any fuel. The 2 rocket boosters, the white ones, we jettisoned on accident. The orange tank, we jettisoned. So as we're coming in, we're just a big old dumb rock falling back into space. So the way we slow ourselves down is that we do a series of turns. If we come into the runway like this, I mean, this is the runway, this is us. And at the end, you'll notice that he'll pull the nose of the space shuttle up. That again helps to slow us down. He deploys the landing gear, we land, and the last thing that helps to slow us down is a drag chute or a parachute that you'll see come right out the back of the shuttle. And this was a gorgeous landing. We landed right at dusk, and about a half hour after we landed, it started pouring rain. So the parachute comes out, it gets jettisoned away because we don't want it to get stuck in the engine, and then we hit the brakes, and we got back on Earth December 22nd, just in time for Santa to bring me a great present, but that was like the best present that year of all. And so, just want to say, why is communication important? It is important no matter what you do. It's important if you're an astronaut, it's important if you're a communication major, it's important if you're a math major. You're going to have to talk to people all your life, so you might as well be proficient in doing it. Communication was hugely important to me. We had a group of people in mission control 24/7. Every minute that we were in space, we had people on the ground making sure that we were doing the right thing, tracking our movements, making sure the shuttle was performing phenomenally. Communication was important for me when I flew a jet. It's important when I was flying with colleagues and we're doing a formation because we need to know that, hey, I'm going to turn 5 degrees right, so you need to turn with me so I don't run into you. And it was uber important on the shuttle. It was important when I had somebody on the end of the robotic arm who told me, you have 5 more meters, then you need to stop, otherwise you're going to smack me into the side of the space station. That's kind of important to know. So with that, I just want to thank you for your time today. I want to say that I'm sure you'll all be phenomenal speakers. I'm really impressed with the fact that you have a speaking studio. I wish we had that when I was coming up. I guess my speaking studio was my mother. Both had it back then, but it was effective. So I cannot imagine how effective the speaking studio is going to be. With that, I guess we can open for questions, and thank you very much for your attention.
Now we're going to open the floor for questions. Not always the ones now.
what did they tell me?
Yeah, what technical skills did you have to go back and do?
Technical skills. And it wasn't so much that I was missing something. So the requirements back then to be an astronaut was that you needed a bachelor's degree in one of the sciences and so forth. And they preferred a master's degree in one of that, and in the same type of field. I had a master's in management, and so they really wanted me just to have more of a technical master's. So that is what they felt I was missing out of the process. A lot of people come on with PhDs, so you have to go big or go home. So I guess that's what they told me to do, go home. By the time I left, I was making, this was 5 years ago, I was making roughly $160,000.
What was the amount of time you used to train to become an astronaut after doing the rocket?
It's kind of a twofold answer. After you get selected to be an astronaut, you go through the basic training. That's roughly a year to a year and a half. Once you have that basic training and you've graduated, you train for your first mission. They give you a year to train. If you've flown before and it's like your second mission, they give you 9 months. And it's a very regimented schedule because you train as a crew. So anywhere between 9 months to a year of training for every space shuttle mission that you go on.
So if you had the opportunity to do it again, would you?
I was ready to go. When I came back, I was like, give me a week, let me get some rest because I was really tired. And I'm ready to go again.
Are you disappointed about the discontinuation of the space shuttle?
I am. We knew back in 2003 when President Bush II made the announcement that they were going to stop the shuttle program. We were disappointed at that time. We didn't really think it was going to happen. We said, oh, the administration will come in. And everything changes with a different administration. So we just really kind of in the back of our minds thought they're not going to let this happen. Obviously, we were wrong. So yes, I am disappointed as we saw that coming more to fruition. We were hoping, and the plan was that we'd have our own vehicle again before they put the shuttles into retirement. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. And now we're waiting on private industry. So I'm hoping they'll be very successful because right now the astronauts are going up on the Russian Soyuz and it's costing us $55 million a pop. And anytime they want to, they'll raise the prices because they have a monopoly. That's what they can do. So yes, I was very disappointed in that decision.
What did they do about it?
I'm sorry.
What did they do about it?
I said, what did they do about it after the consideration of showing, like, how did they find out that doing it?
All right, so in 2003, when the Space Shuttle Columbia disintegrated, they stopped flying altogether. I was actually supposed to fly in September of that year. That was when our mission was slated for. We didn't end up flying until 2006. They stopped flying because they wanted to figure out what the problem was and to fix it. And it took, a massive amount of time. First of all, we had to go find what was left of the shuttle. So that took a while. And then we had to take all the pieces and put it back together. And I was involved in that. And then they had to do just tons of failure analysis to figure out what was wrong. So, and after that, once they found out that what went wrong, essentially when the shuttle was launching, something came off of the shuttle, a piece came off, hit the wing, damaged the tile. The tile was there to protect the shuttle as it comes back in because the temperatures get up to about 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. So when the shuttle was dinged, there was no protection. They went through that part of the atmosphere. The wiring heated up, it caught fire and just spread throughout the shuttle. So the second piece that they had to do was figure out if that scenario ever happened again, how they were going to repair that tile in space. And so that took another 6 months or so. So the next launch didn't happen for a good year. They had another small issue go along with that shuttle that they wanted to figure out and repair. We did that and we started flying into the year. Yeah.
I know that you have to be really fit to be an astronaut. What kind of training did they have you do? Were you an athlete prior?
I was a competitive bodybuilder, but that was just one of my things that I did. But I always told people that you have to be fit enough to fit through the overhead window and shuttle because that's one of the escape mechanisms. So the shuttle window overhead is about this big. And we actually have our own gym that's open 24/7. We had trainers that were at our disposal. We had a pool. They highly encouraged everyone to exercise, and it helped you tremendously when you came back to space. It would help you adapt to Earth better. And so while there was no fitness requirements per se, you were encouraged to stay in shape, and it was to your benefit to be stay in shape. I ran, I biked, and I lifted weights. Yes.
I'm sorry. My name is May Orr, and I'm here from Charlotte, North Carolina, representing the National Association of Negro Business and Professional Women Clubs Incorporated. And we would like to honor you in March 22nd at our Hall of Fame, which it takes place at the